And welcome back, fourth and long fans. It's your footy correspondent, Coach Donnie Hess here, and I am back again with another episode. And ladies and gentlemen, I don't mean to scare you, but I found one. I found a very special fan here. You'll figure out what I'm talking about in just a second. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Miss Sasha Doty. Sasha, down from Melbourne, how are you doing today?
Hi, Donnie. I'm great. Thank you for having me. This is an exciting moment for me to be able to talk about my particular team.
Well, as many people that do follow this, you are one of the very few. Unfortunately, I think most people will get it, but we'll get to that in just a little bit. I love at the start of my episode kind of finding out a little bit about the person I'm chatting with outside of the game of footy. So if you want to, just a real quick bio of who Sasha is.
Yeah, sure. Well, I am a communications manager. I work for the Australian Workers Union, so I'm in the union movement in Melbourne, Victoria. I studied sports journalism and used to work at a Channel 7 network doing, I used to drive the news vans around. So I made sure everything was live. So it was a pretty nerve-wracking job. Still love sports, obviously. Do all that on the side with Chicks Talking Footy and do some VFLW commentating and special comments. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell. I play footy as well, but it's at a local level. So I won't bore you with those details, but it's very grassroots and I play in the ruck and full forward position.
Awesome. That is great. I played full forward when I did play it. I was more of the plugger lock it, stay in the goal square and only lead out when there was absolutely a possibility
Yeah,
to get
that's
the
sort of
footy.
how I like to play it too,
Not a
especially as each
problem.
year I get older.
That is not a problem. So since you play footy, and again, you've been around footy all your life, what's your favorite thing about the sport of football?
Look, I have always just loved the actual physicality of it. So growing up, kicking the footy was always such a buzz. I grew up in a country town where mainly guys and boys played football. So girls we only got to kick at lunchtime, but I loved that I could kick further than a lot of them. And when I finally got to play, it's that physicality you don't get with any other sport, especially ones I played growing up.
Awesome. Awesome. So we'll stay in the past just a little bit. Can you remember your earliest footballing memory?
Oh, look, it's not anything that specific. So I didn't follow footy until a little bit later, probably late primary school, early high school, just because my family isn't very sporting in that regard. So I think mainly just going around to friends' houses, slowly getting interested by watching the game with their families and getting the buzz when they get all excited. So probably early days just hanging out at friends and sort of trying to work out the rules and things like that. So nothing sort of huge, but enough to pique my interest for the coming years.
Not a problem. And we've gotten to the question. I know everybody, I've teased it a little bit. Who's your club and why are you a supporter of them?
Well, how long have you got? I support the Gold Coast Suns, which even in Melbourne you get looked at very strangely. Why? Why would you support a club like that? That's a great question. I have a long sort of story, but I'll try and shorten it for you guys listening. I actually lived in South Australia and I'm from there, and I used to work for Port Adelaide Football Club years and years ago. So I was a Port fan. Unfortunately, it didn't go very well in the end. And I moved away to the UK and I gave footy up for a bit. And by the time I came back, my whole family had moved to the Gold Coast. The Gold Coast Suns were just starting. And I thought, I'll jump on now and see how we go, thinking in my mind that they might have done a little bit better than they have in the last few years. And now I'm sort of stuck with them in a way, but I'm enjoying their progress in the last couple of years, to be honest. So I'll stick it out, but it's a hard slog being a Suns fan.
It's never easy. And I'll tell you this, and this is no offense to any Gold Coast fans, but my host, when we do our AFL ones, has a running joke. And again, I do not mean this disrespectfully. He has what he calls the Gold Coast fans of the week. Every time they win, they gain fans. Every time they lose
Yeah.
fans. So it was always kind of a fluctuating fun thing. And I know the people that have watched last year's with my US fans once, we could never find a Gold Coast US fan. So I'm hoping one of these days we'll get a few there, but it is great to finally meet a Gold Coast fan. It is awesome. And I think it's amazing that you latched onto it. So you said your family moved to the Gold Coast. Are all your family Gold Coast fans now, or are they kind of still?
Well, I mean, my sister follows them a little bit, but mum and dad, they're more surf, water orientated. So being on the Gold Coast, obviously, I think if anyone's looking for a club to support and go and see games, that is probably the best destination you could go for. It's, pristine beaches, green, warm weather all year round. So why wouldn't you? But yeah, look, it is what it is. I talk about it. They'll notice when they win. Mum will mention it to me, but when they lose, they don't say anything. So it's just
there is nothing wrong with that. I respect that you've stayed. I respect that you've stayed on. That's awesome. I really, really do. So again, the Gold Coast Suns haven't been along very often, but can you remember the first Gold Coast Suns item you ever bought or were given?
Yeah, actually, it was given to me, and it was I had a new Kelpie puppy dog, and he got a Gold Coast Suns collar and lead. That was the first things, and then I got a Guernsey for my birthday. So I'm slowly getting memorabilia and things. I don't wear it often, but I do keep it safely away for those moments when they do have a great win or I go to a game. So
that's not a bad thing. That's great. Each one is a little bit different on what the new thing that they get so this one is a little bit younger, so there's not as much prestige and history to it, but
absolutely.
It'll get there.
So it will.
Yes. Many people that listen to the podcast would describe me as a diehard fan, with me being the US, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 4 a.m. Sometimes you got to wake up if you want to watch your team live. So I would consider myself a diehard, but how would you describe yourself as a fan for the Gold Coast Suns?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think I'm at the diehard level for the Suns. I think for football in general, I am a pretty consistent fan of the game. But with the Suns, it's hard because sometimes it's difficult to watch the losing games over and over again each week, and you've sort of got to pick your battles. But I'd say I'm intermediate, moving up to advanced. I'm getting there slowly. With COVID, it was hard. I didn't get to obviously go to any games live, which was the plan, to go to all the not home games, but all the Melbourne games here, and try and get over to see my family and watch one on the coast. So that's the plan leading into the new season. But yeah, just a huge diehard fan of footy. So I'll watch most games every weekend.
Not a problem.
If I can, yeah.
That is not a problem. I'm the same way. I may be. I don't know if I've told you. I'm a Sydney Swans supporter. I can't, if you can tell by the red and white in the background.
I was going to ask you. Yep.
Yep. But I watch most of the games, most of them live. The best part about in the US, we have the Watch AFL app, so we can actually watch in tape delay. So I don't have to stay up for every single game. But with my reviews and stuff like that, I like to watch a lot of the games. I've just fallen in love with the sport, so it's just absolutely insane I wish I could get there to see a game live. I haven't seen a professional game live, but one of these days, very soon.
Absolutely.
So we'll stay with that a little bit with my next question. Can you remember the first Suns game you ever attended?
Yeah, I can. It was, I think, around 2013 mark. So I'd only been in Melbourne for a year or two, and my birthday sort of falls in winter, so it was perfect time. And yeah, we went to a game at the MCG, which they don't get to play at often. It was great because I think, there might have been 20 of us Sun supporters in a stadium. So you stand out like a sore thumb, really. But yeah, it sort of just made me feel like I'd made the right choice at that time. So yeah, and I love going to games at the MCG. So, regardless of if they're filled with huge crowds or not. So
yeah, I completely understand that. And at least you're proud about it. You're proud about it. That's all that matters. So
yeah, I've got to own it now. That's it.
Hey, as long as you do, I know that for some people, switching teams is not always a good thing. So it's always kind of fun. So the next question I have, unfortunately, with the Suns kind of short history, unfortunately, and it's nothing against them. I'm glad that the AFL is trying to get a team there. So we'll just kind of simplify this to: do you have a favorite player that's ever worn the Gold Coast Suns, whether it's current, whether it's past? Favorite player that's ever worn the Suns jersey?
I do. I've got a couple, but one that stands out for me is Took Miller, and he has been with them for, I think, most of his career, if I'm correct. And he is now just starting to become like one of their top tier players, and he's, outranked majority of teams and like your Dusty Martins and things like that with disposals and being involved in the game. So having players like him on the Sun side and not leaving is such a great thing to see, that it actually will make an effect in the next couple of seasons if we stick with those sort of guys. So Took Miller's one, and the captain, David Swallow, who's stuck with us for the entire time and hasn't left.
Like it. I like that. Tuke Miller was one of those. He impressed me almost all year. I remember when I was filling up my personal all Australian team for my thing. He was one of them that I put in there because I just thought he had an incredible season. He was always high in disposals. He's such a great tackler. He never gives up, and he just plays the style of footy that I love watching. He's just a tough, gritty player. So he was one of my favorites whenever I watched Suns games. He was always the guy I had to find how he was doing in all that. So
yeah, he had an astounding season. I was just stressed that he was going to move or be offered some, golden contract at another club, but I'm so glad he's staying with us for a bit longer.
I love that. I totally respect that he has that loyalty to the club. So again, as we've kind of established, Gold Coast again doesn't have a long history, but can you remember your most memorable moment as a Gold Coast Sun supporter?
Yeah, that one for me was the first Q clash, which is Brisbane and Gold Coast, obviously two Queensland teams. And it was the very first one. So Gold Coast had a fair bit to prove. And they won, I think, by 8 points. So it was huge for them, for the fans, the club itself, to beat the Lions, who's, they're pretty established. They obviously came out of Fitzroy, and they had that controversy early on in their, early stages. But yeah, to beat them, on the very first one was exciting, and I remember that being at the pub watching that one. So.
Awesome. The Q clash is always fun because no matter how good both teams are doing, it's always tough. It's always physical. I love the Q clash games. They're always fun. So we'll start to kind of go more to the present more than the past a little bit. It is last season. Again, the words to describe this would be lackluster. Again, the season just kind of didn't turn out the way they wanted it to. And again, there's so much talent there. I think a lot of people in the AFL just want this team to succeed. They're just not getting it right. I think a lot of people love Stewie Doo there. I think Stewie Doo's coaching has been really, really good for it. So kind of what are your thoughts on last season? What did they perform better than you expected? Were they a little disappointing? Kind of what were your thoughts?
Oh, look, I think it was a mixed bag, and I love Stewie Doo. And again, he was playing for Port when I worked there. So it's that sort of seeing the transition from player to coach has been really great. And I think he's been the best coach for us. And hopefully he'll stay a bit longer as well. But look, I feel like there was so many positives, but again, lackluster is a good word to describe it as well. So that, they'd have these peak moments where you're like, geez, they're really on now. Like they've got a huge chance. And then whether it's a fitness or a youth thing, they sort of drop off in that third, fourth quarter and just be steamrolled by the other side, regardless of, whether it's a team at the bottom of the ladder or the top. So they had some amazing moments, don't get me wrong. But yeah, a long way to go in consistency, which is key, I think, for them.
Yeah, and their youth, the youth is one of those. They're still such a young side. They've got so many youngsters.
They really are, yeah.
And I almost say this a little bit. I've said this a little bit with GWS, is that sometimes when you draft nothing but superstar players, these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 picks, sometimes you don't have that workhorse guy, the guy that's the role player, shall we say, that's just going to go in, they're going to tackle, they're going to do what the coach asked them to do, but they're not going to do it with flair. So I think that's kind of what Gold Coast is missing, that veteran, that middle-ager guy that's just going to go in. He's just going to do what he's asked. He's not going to try to do too much. And I think if they can start kind of bleeding those guys in, I think Gold Coast has the list. If they can keep everybody there, they have a ton of
That's
talent.
the key,
They
yeah.
could be scary good. But unfortunately, as years have shown before, some of the superstars get picked off by Richmond and some of the clubs, the Victorian clubs.
I think that's the hardest thing to watch, seeing how well those players that, so Jaeger O'Meara moving to, I think it was Hawks and then on to Port, if I'm right. And yeah, all these are Prestia moving on, and like all these great players that could potentially stick in and finish their career there, but obviously some of them might be, different reasons for not wanting to stay on the Gold Coast. And then obviously Gary Ablett was the huge one that came on board. And I think that was great for us at the time. It really helped with promotion and people tuning into the game because he's such an amazing athlete. But then you lose all these players that they've spent time drafting and training. So that's why I'm so glad, players like Took Miller, Matt Rowell, who's young and, he's astounding in his skill. I'm really hoping now that they've sort of started to form this tight-knit group that they're going to stick around together for a bit longer. And I think in a way the pandemic has brought them closer together because they had to stay in those hubs so much and, get to know each other even more than normal. So that's my sort of wish, is that it all sticks together at least for a couple of seasons.
Yeah, the biggest thing will be King, Lukosius, and Anderson over the next few years will be can you keep them? Can you keep them?
Yeah,
if you can, then I think you've got what they need. Exactly.
Because Lukosius again, amazing players.
And I want them to, because I am getting tired of seeing this Gold Coast team just pillaged each and every time of these top tier talents, because it's never going to work if they can't keep these guys there. And I know it's not easy. And the winning is one of those that these kids want. They're so used to winning that when they go up to the Gold Coast, maybe they don't have that success. I think that's the hardest part for them. So, all right.
I think
yeah. So we'll stay on that a little bit. We've gone through the off season. We've gone through the trade period. We've gone through the free agency period. Do you keep an eye on the off season at all? And if so, what are your kind of thoughts on how Gold Coast has handled it?
I do. I mean, I listen and read, on Twitter, and then sort of follow a couple of the AFL journos just to see what's happening. But I'm not, I don't live and breathe every day during draft season, because you sort of know when the big stuff comes out. And then being a member, you get emails saying what's happening. But yeah, I'd like to at least graze over it, I guess, just to see where my team's at. But normally for me, it's sort of once that preseason kicks in, I take a bit more notice.
Makes sense. So I'm one of those that I hate the word expectations for a season, because I think it puts undue pressure, or it adds they have to do this type of thing. So what are kind of your thoughts going into next year? Or do you see them moving up the ladder? Do you see more consistency, or do we fear to say that it's going to be another season like last year again in the Gold Coast?
No, look, I think that they can only go up after 2021 season was promising for them. They did win against some really top sides, which surprised a lot of people. And I think they just, as long as the other thing is, you can't just turf a coach time, and you see that in other clubs where they get rid of the coach because they think that's the problem. Or I think for the Suns, that's not the issue. I think Stewie does a great job. I think the key for these guys is, to utilise their players more. So, Ben King is an amazing forward, but he's so tall, you could utilise him in other areas, and you don't know what versatility these players have. Sticking through the midfield, I think it's just that fitness and the four quarters, I think, and the young legs that they've got. And there's you can't do a lot about that, really. You can't make them, grow up quicker or get, super primed before they're ready. But I think it's certainly they're on their way. And, I wouldn't be surprised if they did break into the top 8 next season, which I think is definitely on the cards.
They've got the skill and they've got the talent for it. The biggest question is will the work ethic. That's the biggest
Yeah.
thing there. So I know over here in the States, one of the things that a lot of us Americans, especially in American sports, we like being the general manager. We like being the person that makes the moves. So I'm going to have a little
Yeah.
fun here with you. I'm going to install you as the Gold Coast list manager as of right now. The other 17 clubs have open lists. You can get one player from any of the other 17 clubs. Who's
Oof.
the first player you bring into the Gold Coast Suns?
Yeah. Okay. Clayton Oliver from Melbourne. I think he is hugely talented. He obviously, again, I feel like him and Took Miller together would just move the ball so well through the midfield. They're also got the ability to kick, and he can kick goals too. I think he's awesome. I love Clary, and I'd love to have him on our team.
He'd be a very interesting addition up at the Gold Coast for sure.
He'd have to
it
wear a
would
lot
be
of
fun.
sunscreen, that's for sure.
Definitely. Oh, that is a great one. So, all right. So since you are in Melbourne, this next question will be very, very interesting for me. Is the last 2 years we've seen the grand final outside of Victorian soil in the Gabba and at Perth, and I've heard the discussions in some of the podcasts that I've listened to and different things that people are intrigued with the fact that maybe the grand final could potentially be a traveling grand final. I know 50 years, I know people that are listening to it, I know the contract's there. But as a person living in Melbourne, are you one of those that the grand final needs to be at the MCG every year, same time? Or is there a little part of you after the last couple of years that wouldn't mind seeing the grand final be a traveling grand final?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and I think it has, two very big arguments either side of historical and, moving forward with the game. I sort of come from playing football where, whatever team is on the ladder at the highest, we play at their ground sort of thing for the finals. And so it was sort of not weird to me that we always have it at the G, but it was like, why wouldn't we move it around a little bit if, say Sydney or the Gold Coast, say they're playing each other, why would you play in Victoria? That sort of, to me, I get it, but I also see the reasoning behind it. So I'm sort of on the fence a little bit about it. I love the atmosphere of finals during that time here in Melbourne, especially when, there is a parade and there is ability to go out and watch it and things like that and be able to go to the game itself. But I think it's time to look forward, because especially if you want those other clubs to succeed and you want other states to embrace footy like Victoria and, South Australia have, I think it would be a really smart move to do that.
Yeah, and I've and some of the answers I've heard is everybody's like, well, you can get 100,000 people. I go, well, financially, yes, that makes tons of sense, but I've one of those. I threw up this idea is because of the history that maybe you do it like every 4 years, almost like the Olympics that you do every 4 years. You go to the Gabba, then you go to the Adelaide Oval, then you go to Perth, then you go to Sydney. Sydney's a little bit more difficult because you really don't have a specific footy ground because the biggest arena there is not really
Big, yeah.
ideal. Well, no, it's not really ideal. I think it's the Allianz. There's like some kind of arena that's had like 60 or 70,000. That it's like a rugby stadium basically that they barely use anymore because it's kind of decrepit, I guess. Again, I this might be secondhand information, but
no,
okay. I see it both ways too. Like the grandeur of the 230 kick, 100,000 people. It's hard to argue that is not pristinely cool, but it is kind of awesome that my argument, and maybe this, and I've said this before, is with the US, we have the Super Bowl, which is kind of the equivalent. Again, I'm not equivalent. It's not the same. I know.
I was going to ask you, do they do it at the same place every year or do they move it?
It travels to different places every year. And the other thing that I say too, that my discussion with is everybody's like, well, then certain fans can't come. I was like, well, there's a ton of people over here. There's 330 million people in the US. And normally the least amount of people that can get into the Super Bowl is about 60,000. So that's not a lot of people that are going to get in. So the argument I hear all the time for people is, well, fans can't make it to the game. Well, disappointment's going to happen in life. Not everybody's going to make it to every game. I understand that it's different with the Super Bowl over here in the US because we have owners. where in the AFL you've got the membership and you've got a little bit of, it's a completely different
Yeah.
type of situation. So I understand it that way too, but I think it was cool. I thought Perth was amazing. I thought that was absolutely
Yeah.
outstanding. I thought the Gabba was pretty well done. I'm interested to see, can South Australia do it? Because the Adelaide Oval
Yeah.
is such a gorgeous oval. That would be fun to see a
It's
grand final there.
stunning. Yeah, I love the Adelaide Oval, and I've been there quite a few times, having lived there. But yeah, I think it would be great, and the atmosphere, it just gives a different outlook. I mean, on a perspective of the AFLW grand final being at Adelaide, and that being filled to the brim, that sort of stuff. You just, I think each state deserves that at one point. It's probably a very unpopular opinion. Might get some hate mail for saying it, but yeah, I don't see the issue, and I think Perth did an amazing job. My only sort of stipulation would be to have it still in the afternoon. I'm not a fan of the night game grand final. That's just one thing I'd want.
It is a very common one there, and I love it. You kind of helped me transition to my next question spectacularly. I already know the answer to this because you do Chicks Talking Footy, so obviously you're going to be an AFLW fan. So, kind of, what were your thoughts on the Gold Coast last year, and how excited are you to see Charlie Rowbottom being able to run out with the Suns next season?
Yeah, it's hugely exciting. I mean, I think it's going to be amazing for them as a squad. Look, obviously they didn't have the best beginning last year. I think they won one or two games. It was tough, but it's always going to be when you're coming in new. Especially, like, as you said, they're not only a young club, it's sort of a young game still, because rugby is so predominant and soccer over there. So you've got girls who are slowly coming up through NAB League and teacups and all sorts. But look, it is exciting. Again, I'm hoping to actually physically go and see games this time around as well, because the televised stuff, had to watch it on an app a bit because of rights here and all that sort of stuff. But very excited, and I'm hoping that they get over the line a bit more, even if it's just to beat the Lions.
Yeah, I completely agree. And then the fact that the AFLW will be full 18 teams, all the squads have a club coming in next year, not this year, next year. I know, sad for me as a Swans fan, but as I told your fellow compadre on Chicks Talking Footy, I have the great announcement of I have been signed up as a foundation member for the AFLW Swans Club, and I take a lot of pride in that because I'm one of those. I'm very avid when it comes to it. I did reviews last year for the AFLW. I think the game is just growing at a phenomenal rate. I cannot wait to see the ladies this year play. It's bittersweet a little bit since I don't have the Swans, but I'm going to watch it with gusto. And then when the Swans come in, I will be full-fledged behind the ladies in the red and white. So I like to end my discussions or questions here with some fun questions. So I'm going to ask you just a few fun ones here.
Go for it.
When you go to the footy, what's your go-to food at the footy?
A meat pie with sauce every time.
Awesome. That tends to be one of the more popular answers. I absolutely love that. And I don't know if you've heard about this, but one of the things I kind of had a fun thing. I actually made homemade meat pies this year to watch the grand final.
Awesome.
Yep. So I made.
How did they go?
They went really well. I found a recipe on YouTube. There's an Australian chef that does a YouTube video series called The One Pot Chef, and he did Aussie meat pies. So I copied and pasted the recipe, and I did it the night before, prepped it, cooked them, set them, and then put them in our warmer just before, about 45 minutes before first bounce. And I had a pie with the grand final, and we live streamed it on this particular on the Twitch stream for this particular YouTube channel, and a lot of people loved it. A lot of people loved that I took the time. I had one follower who tweeted out and said, "You need an Aussie passport for doing that, mate." So I got a kick out of that. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So when you go to the footy, I'm one of those. I want to, since I haven't been to a game in a professional game with the seatings and the different tiers. What would
Mhm.
you say is your ideal place to watch the footy at the ground?
I sort of always end up sort of midway. It's sort of general admission, I guess, as well. So midway, sort of between the goals, just so I have a better view. Sometimes it's behind the goals, up higher, not with the cheer squads, but I do enjoy watching them as well. The rare occasions that I've been in a corporate box, that has been amazing. And anyone that wants to give me tickets to corporate box, I will take it, because you get to see a whole different perspective. But it is great to just be on GA, get to go anywhere. You can pick your seat. If it's not completely busy, you can sort of move around and have different perspectives of the game as well. So
Awesome. That is great. So as we kind of discussed a little bit with this, is that unfortunately there are not a lot of Gold Coast fans, and with this channel
no.
being primarily US based sports, NFL and MLB, NHL. Occasionally we'll get some US fans that'll click on these Aussie Rules videos trying to figure out what this is. So I thought, for fun, towards the end, I'd say, here's your shot. Here's your chance to give just a quick pitch to maybe an American fan who happens to click on this video, a good pitch of why they should be a Gold Coast supporter.
All right. Well, firstly, they're going to be doing quite well next season. So why not jump on now? If you ever happen to travel to Australia, you need to go to the Gold Coast and you probably won't want to leave. So pick a team where there's pristine beaches, there's surf, there's, people that look like they walked out of magazine. The talent, going back to the actual game though, the talent is huge at the moment. I think you'd be wild not to jump on board now, because I think it's only up for the Suns. Also the colours, they're yellow and red, not too bad. There's a bit of blue in there, so you can, work it with any wardrobe that you've got. Other than that, just the fact that they're a fun side, it's a fun team as well.
Love it. Absolutely love it. And I love my last question that I always ask, and this is just because I like hearing the different things that people come up with. What is your favorite game of footy that you have ever seen, whether TV or live? Doesn't have to be the Suns. Favorite game of footy you've ever seen?
Well, I think, it can be a local one as well, or?
Yep, it can be a local one too. I'm no preference.
Well, the favorite game, just from memory, is this season that we played my team, the Brunswick Renegades. We had our captain played her 250th game of AFL football. So that's pretty unheard of for women to play that many games in general. So to see, A, we won that game. B, she's an absolute rocket of a player, and I love watching her bump players and do all sorts. But having her being carried off by the team, I think, was a huge moment, not only for her, but for our club. And we were all just so chuffed when we won by 2 points, I think. So that's probably the most memorable at this stage for me.
That's fantastic. That you're the first person to go outside of the AFL. I love it. I absolutely love it, because I put no preference on that. I've said to everybody, it doesn't have to be your team, just favorite game of footy you've ever seen. I
No, look,
absolutely love that.
it's just the milestone for me that I couldn't imagine being able to play that many games. I think it's such an amazing effort. So
Yeah, definitely not easy. Well, Sasha, this has been an awesome conversation. I'm so happy I finally was able to sit down and have a chat with a Gold Coast supporter, and an awesome Gold Coast supporter at that. I know we connected through a good friend, Fee, and I'm so awesome that you've joined the Chicks Talking Footy. I think you brought a lot of knowledge and a lot of insight to the show. As I kind of told you off camera, I'm kind of the unofficial #1 fan of Chicks Talking Footy over here in the States. I love you ladies. You're doing awesome. Keep up the great work down there, and keep
thank
doing
you.
those podcasts. They're awesome.
Oh, thank you. I really love speaking about my team, and then I feel really bad I haven't actually got any of the any of the colours on today. But look, I'm sure that we can make it happen at some point. And if they win a game, I'm happy to come back and have a chat if they get into the finals.
Well, we'll definitely see. I do AFLW reviews, so who knows? Maybe I'll reach out, and maybe you and I can sit down and have a chat for a round, for an AFLW round. How about that?
I'd love to. Love to.
That
Thank
that
you.
would be absolutely awesome. Here you go, ladies and gentlemen. One of the rounds this year in the AFLW, we will have Sasha back on the channel. I cannot wait. AFLW cannot get here soon enough. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another episode in my Aussie Fan Supporter Series. Sasha, again, thank you so much for hopping on the show today.
No problems. Thanks for having me, Donnie.
No problem. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be back with more episodes coming very soon. Keep an eye out. They're coming very, very soon.